Good to have you on the International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. And this is a show where we bring you news, events, and stories from across the world. Here we ensure that the real on-time news are packaged for the viewing pleasure of the people. And today we'll be looking at quite a number of stories. And of course, I won't be doing this alone. I have here with me Anita Obari. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you too.
Yeah, let's look at our stories for today, the headlines. This is from Niger. Military succumbs to dialogue. And from Afghanistan, Taliban's entrench after 2 years of rule. And on Ethiopia, a strike killed dozens of protesters.
On immigration, authorities evacuate 48 migrants from inflatable boats in Lesbos. Still on immigration, charity ship rescues dozens of migrants from Italian island. And from Ecuador, gang leader moves to jail by thousands of soldiers.
There's and many more stories we'll be looking at when we return from this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network, and now to our stories. 1 week after the expiration of the Ottomanian President Mohammed Bazoum on July 26, 2023, has justified the change of government in the country, while also stating his readiness for dialogue. Leaders of the junta, General Abdurrahman Tayani, who spoke in Mani, capital of Niger, at the weekend while receiving its audience Nigerian intervention team led by the Sheikh Balalau, said the military intervention was informed by imminent threat to both Niger and Nigeria had to be averted. Low, who is the national chairman of the Jama'atu Izzatulu Idida Vazawutu Zami, in a statement he personally signed yesterday, quoted Tayani as explaining the rationale behind the coup. He said Tayani, who according to him a warm reception, claimed the coup was well intended, adding that they struck to stave off his immediate threat that would have affected not Niger Republic but also Nigeria.
The Taliban have settled in as rulers of Afghanistan 2 years after the ceasefire as US and NATO forces withdrew from the country following 2 decades of war. The Taliban face no significant opposition that could topple them. They have avoided internal divisions by falling in line behind their ideological unbending leader. They have kept the struggling economy afloat and part of holding investment talks with capital-rich regional countries, even as the international community withholds formal recognition. They have improved domestic security through crackdowns on armed groups such as the Islamic State and say they are fighting corruption and opium production. But it's their slew of bans on Afghan girls and women that dominated the Taliban's second year in charge. They barred them from parks, gyms, universities, and jobs at non-governmental groups and the United Nations, all in the space of a few months, allegedly because they weren't wearing proper hijab, the Islamic head covering, or violated gender segregation rules. These orders follow the previous ban issued in the first year of Taliban rule on girls going to school beyond 6th grade.
Local media in the Ethiopian region of Amharan has reported that Ethiopian army drone has bombarded protesters, killing at least 70 people. A strike reportedly hit the demonstrators who gathered in a town of Fenote Slam in protest against plan by federal forces to enter the area. The reporters has not been able to verify the claim that there had been no commitment yet from the government in Addis Ababa. The army and the military group called Fano has been involved in a heavy clash across the Haraman region in recent weeks. The military had refused to disarm, promising the federal government to deploy the army.
Greek authorities said Sunday they had safely rescued 48 migrants from the rudderless inflatable boats off the island of Lesbos close to the Turkish coast. A Coast Guard vessel on patrol off the island sighted the boat Sunday morning, the Greek Coast Guard said in a communique. The crew carried out the safe evacuation and rescue of 48 foreigners who were transported to the port of Mytilene, the island's capital, the Coast Guard said. 3 of those rescued were picked up by an ambulance and taken to the General Hospital of Mytilene for the provision of first aid, where they remain hospitalized, it added. The Coast Guard did not mention the ethnicities of the migrants, but a YouTube video it released shows most of them are Africans. The packed and floatable vessel sank, the Coast Guard said. Greece has seen a rise in migrant arrivals from Turkey, mostly by sea, in recent weeks amid more climate summer sailing conditions.
Migrants who set out in a dozen of flimsy boats launched by smugglers on Tunisian shore has embarked on a 3 tiny Italian island in a span of 2 days, officials say. Separately, a charity vessel carried out 15 rescue operations, and the Italian Coast Guard on Sunday recovered a body off the western coast of Sicily from the shipwreck. Italian Prime Giorgia Molani has repeatedly encouraged Tunisia to put an end to the near-daily launching of multiple vessels from its port. But in the last 10 days, there has been a spate of boats capsized, shipwrecked, or otherwise in distress. Tens of thousands of migrants have set out this year for northern African shore, trying to reach Ethiopia, Europe. Last week, the merchant ship took aboard for survival who were trapped in a smuggler's engineer's boat. They recounted how they had been tossed into the sea with towering waves knocked over their vessel, and the 41 followers passengers didn't survive. A tragedy Pope Francis spoke of when gracing the public on Sunday in St. Peter's Square.
Thousands of Ecuadorian soldiers and police have been involved in a dawn operation to move a notorious gang leader to a maximum security jail. Jose Adolfo Messias, known as Fito, is accused of sending death threats to Ecuador's murdered presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. The anti-corruption campaigner was shot 3 times in the head, leaving a campaign rally on Wednesday. Before his mother, Mr. Villavicencio, said he had been threatened by Fito. "If I continue mentioning Los Choneros, the gang, they are going to break me," he said. His death has shocked a nation that has largely escaped the decades of drug gang violence, cartel wars, and corruption that has blighted many of its neighbors. Crime has, however, shot up in recent years, fueled by the growth of Colombian and Mexican drug cartels.
A high school in northeastern Cambodian has been forced to close temporarily after thousands of unexploded ammunition were discovered. Cambodia remained one of the world's most heaviest-minded countries 48 years after the end of its brutal civil war. At that time, the Queen Cosmax High School in Caris province was being used as a military station. Photos show turned to Russian explosive neatly stuck in a row and grounded and anti-tank launchers among them. In total, more than 2,000 pieces of ordnance was discovered over the 3 days hang Ratana. Director General of the Cambodian Mine Action Center told AFP news agency he said ammunition were found when the ground was being cleared to expand a garden, and if the whole school was cleared, more would likely to be dug up. It is huge stroke of luck for the students. Those explosive devices are easily to explode if someone dug into the ground and hit them, he said.
A baby aged just 22 days, her 12-year-old brother and their parents were among 7 people killed by Russian shells in southern Ukraine on Sunday. Bombs hit their family home in the village of Shryoka-Balka in Kherson, Interior Minister Igor Klimenko said. The dead also included another village resident and 2 men in neighboring Stanislav. Terrorists must be stopped. They must be stopped by force, said Mr. Klimenko. They don't understand anything else. The minister shared photographs of the aftermath of the attack on Shryoka-Balka, showing black columns of smoke rising from buildings and the digitally obscured bodies of some of the dead. 13 others were injured in the shelling, he added. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky used his daily address to the nation to condemn the brutal attack in Shryoka-Balka.
1 person was reportedly killed and wounded in a terrorist attack at a shrine in the Iranian city of the Shirak, state media reported on Sunday. The official Iran news agency said a gunman attempted to enter the Shah Ghazi shrine and opened fire on the visitors before he could be subdued. Chara was the scene of another attack in October, claimed by Islamic State, when 13 people died. No group has immediately claimed the latest attack. State media originally stated 2 attackers were involved and 4 people has been killed, or revised the figure to a lone attacker, 1 dead and 8 injured. Yadoha Buhari, the regional Islamic Revolutionary Guard commander, told State TV that the terrorists entered the gate of the shrine and opened fire.
Trial begins. MPs will then be able to change the legislation, ultimately making it a permanent law. MPs called on Article 85 of Iran's constitution to progress the legislation, which allows a parliamentary committee to review bills without public debate.
Ministers are facing renewed pressure to tackle boats crossing in the channel after 6 migrants died when the vessel sank off the France coast on Saturday. Labour said people smugglers were running ring around the government, and the Tory backbencher said the UK had a moral duty both to our town citizens and the Islam seeker to act. The government has made stopping the boat on one of its 5 priorities. Investigation continue in a recent which saw 95 people rescued. The overloaded vessel, which got into difficulty and capsized 12 miles off Shangati, was said to be one of the members of the migrants' vessel, which set off in the hope of reaching the UK. The incident happened in French water at about 4 p.m. local time, with British and French team working together to rescue the migrants. The people on board were reported to be mainly Afghan, with some Sudanese.
Long-shot Democratic presidential candidate and conspiracy theorist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said Sunday that he would support a national ban on abortion after the first 3 months of pregnancy if he is elected. "I believe the decision to abort a child should be up to the woman during the first 3 months of life," Kennedy said in an interview at the Iowa State Fair here. Pressed about whether what that meant signing a federal ban at 15 or 21 weeks, he said yes. "Once a child is viable outside the womb, I think then the state has an interest in puts Kennedy, who's mounting a controversial bid to unseat President Joe Biden as the Democratic standard have been a sustained motivator for voters. Kennedy defended running as a Democrat.
Authorities are searching for the 5 suspects after the shooting at the North Philadelphia playground left 8 in Diamond Basket Court, which 5 males started shooting at the group just before 6 p.m. Friday, then flee. Police said Narcissus Morris, 22, and Naria Flocks, 24, were killed at the 23-year-old man shot twice in the abdomen in a critical condition. Police told the Philadelphia Liquidator that Spain shells seized from the different Climber fire firm were found on the court. Major James Kenny said in a social media post that he was horrified and praying for the victims as well as their families and loved ones. He said the city offered a $10 reward for information leading to arrest and conviction in shooting near school, recreation center, or libraries.
Crews continue to battle flare-ups in the wildfires that have devastated the Hawaiian islands of Maui and so far killed at least 93 people as of Sunday morning, with others still missing, according to government officials. The term flare-up refers to any situation where the rate of spread or intensity of a wildfire accelerates suddenly. It is a phenomenon that does not typically last long or require significant overall changes to a given wildfire management plan, the U.S. Forest Service says. As firefighters work to extinguish flare-ups in blazes that broke out last Tuesday in the historic West Maui town of Lahaina and in Maui's inland, upcountry region, 3 structures in Olinda and 16 structures in Kula, both in upcountry, were destroyed, Maui County reported in a news release issued on Sunday.
A 35-year-old woman from U.S. Michanga has broken the world record for the longest bed on a living female. Notably, Erin Honeycutt has been growing her 11.8-inch bed for about 2 years, according to a press release from the Guinness World Record. A previous record of 25.5 cm belonged to 75-year-old Vivian Weller from the U.S. The excessive growth on her face is the result of the polycystic ovary syndrome, a condition that causes abnormal imbalance and irregular menstruation,
that have been investigating the federal probe into Hunter Biden.
A U.S. soldier was charged with murdering his wife in an Anchorage, Alaska 4 days after he reported for her missing to police. Zairo's Harry Brand, 21, has been charged with first and second degree murder as well as tampering with evidence, according to the court report. Zaria Hariban has first reported missing on Monday, and day after he was last seen at the couple's apartment complex. Echoda police said at the time. Sarah Haridaban, also 21, was a medical with the Alaska National Guard, while her husband worked at the Common Crew members in the Army. According to reports affiliate, the Army and the Alaska National Guard did not immediately respond to the request for comment Sunday. Court record knew Zaro's Haridaban was allegedly Friday and an initiative-changing document filed in a case. The document was not immediately available online. Her copy obtained by the KTUU says Anchorage police has Hariban, but Thursday has a search for her using drones.
Rep. Dean Phillips, who is considering challenging President Joe Biden for the Democratic presidential nomination, on Sunday suggested that the Hunter Biden investigation has compromised the president's image. Speaking about the Justice Department's probe of Biden's sons, Phillips said in an exclusive interview on Meet the Press, "I don't think the president is corrupt. I think the investigation will show that. But this is the important part. It's the image. It's what the news would do," said Phillips, a member of the Democratic leadership team. "We know what era we live in partisanship. It is the attachment to the president. Most people aren't watching Meet the Press every weekend." Phillips reiterated his belief that Biden shouldn't run for a re-election in 2024, but he also made clear that he respects the president. "It's about how people feel. People want to turn the page. I think that's fair to say," he said. "As a Democrat, I adore Joe Biden. He saved this country. He can cement his legacy." Phillips continued, "My real call to action right now is not about me. The call to action is to ask the president to pass the torch."
This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what they blow.
I have fought very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today. Every day our lives are changed by history,
We are one people, all of us.
leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what they block.
I have fought very firmly.
natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
Welcome back. This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. And joining me in this conversation today is Mr. Raymond Mbata, an international affairs analyst. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's look at our story. Niger's munitions soldiers say they will prosecute depose President Mohamed Bazoum for high treason and undermining state security, as after they said they were open to dialogue with West African nations to resolve the mounting regional crisis. The announcement on state television on Sunday night by spokesman Koja Amado Ahmad said the military regime has gathered the necessary evidence to prosecute before competent national and international authorities and ousted president and his local and foreign compliances for high treason for the undetermined the internal and external security of Niger. Bazoum, democratically elected president, was ousted by members of the presidential guard on July 26 and has since been under house arrest and his wife and son in a presidential compound in the capital, Niamey. This is, Mr. Raymond, this is actually becoming confusing right now. I don't understand again because 10 hours ago, we saw in a report where the juntas were ready to bring this to a negotiation table to talk about this peacefully. And then now we are hearing about prosecution of Bazoum. Do you see this coming to an end very soon? It seems the more we are looking for solutions to these issues, the more others are rising. So It seems confusing right now. What do you think?
My candid thoughts on that is illegality cannot stand on illegality. A coup and a junta is not a recognized form of government for the present contemporary times. Being that as it may, if they have any issues with President Bazoum, it has to be in a competent court of law. It cannot be by a kangaroo judicial panel or per se a military court. He is not a military man. He has to be judged by competent judges of his peer in a competent court of jurisdiction. So, if a coup that is not getting its own let me say it don't have the popular support of the people, and you now want to you want to sentence a president, it doesn't work that way. So
now they are saying they are going to prosecute him in both national and international courts. What do you think that holds? Because they're not just going to limit it to Niger, where they probably have so much authority right now. They're also going to international courts. You think this is going to favor them? You think justice is going to be served as it deserves, and this will come to an end soon?
I'm yet to see anybody prosecute any civilian president in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, Switzerland. I don't think it has happened before. Even Charles Taylor was prosecuted under a civilian government of Liberia. So I don't see it happening anytime soon. And it might even scuttle the plans that ECOWAS have with discussions and dialogue that is ongoing. So I think that they are going to put it on pause, because I think the president of Nigeria, who is also in charge of the ECOWAS, is still going to put out that demand that that judgment cannot.
Now, if the juntas were able to drag these issues till this point, I mean, taking it this far, of course, you know that different countries of common presidents have talked about it, trying to plead with them so that they can come to negotiation, even though they claim to be. But now that I say we don't understand. So don't you think if they've dragged it to this point, nothing is impossible in that area?
And they are saying they have enough evidence.
Yes, they're saying they have enough evidence, and they're so loud about it.
Yeah, they've literally starved the man. He has been without food. He has been without power. I mean that's also cause for human rights violations. He can also press charges. He will be represented by his judge, by his lawyers. He can press charges for human rights violations. That begins to throw the case on his own head. That's my point. So
you think, with the fact that there's been so many calls from different quarters,
the junta trying to seek justice will first implement the return of a democratically elected government by setting an election date. Then that elected government is going to now prosecute Bazoum, not by the military. The military should go back to the barracks. That's my point. That's my take there. So you cannot take over government by the guns and at the same time be the judge, be the jury, and the executioner. It doesn't work that way. They have to submit by the International Court of Justice terms of judging a civilian president by civilian government, not by the military government. It has not happened before, and I don't think Niger will be the first time it happens.
But again, if they go to, if they take this to court, like they've said, and it is not in their favor, that's the junta I'm talking about here. Do you see them succumbing to peace, allowing peace to reign in the country?
The junta's days are numbered.
You think so?
Yes, the junta's days are numbered. They are begging for electricity supply to be restored from Nigeria. They are begging for the borders to be open. They can't sustain that. It's unsustainable. And I think they are still going to beg for more reliefs. And also, Johnny is also going to ask for amnesty. At the end of the day, let's see how it turns out to be. But I think that's my predictions.
Yes, we know that actually big. So that's what I'm saying. Do you see them like saying, okay, we have agreed, let peace reign? Because like they said, they're going to bring a lot of evidence. If they come up with all this evidence and it is not in their favor, do you see them saying, let's withdraw this, let peace reign?
The military is going to beg for amnesty. All the soldiers are going to go back to the barracks. They are going to institute a day for elections to resume, and they are going to bring up an elected government, and that elected government can now do as they seem fit with the powers of the people.
You're speaking as though you've gotten a lot of information.
But you know that you know that the military would definitely not just rise up and want to come overtake power without having a reason. Now, they have reasons for this. The anomalies in the system and the leadership pattern of Bazoum have pushed them to this extent. If all of this is not addressed, you think the military, even if we have an democratically elected government come after this process, do you think they're still not going to interfere?
I mean, presently, they refuse talking to ECOWAS in time past, even with Abdul Salam Abubakar leading the contingent. And some Muslim Umars went over there, and all of a sudden they want to discuss. So they are not as rigid as they seem to be. They are still going to shift ground. And democratically elected governments in Africa supersedes the military juntas that are in Africa. So I think that their days are numbered, and they are going to break. They are going to break.
But don't you think it is high time that our democratically elected governments in Africa begin to do the right thing, so we do not keep having these interferences in the democratic processes?
The worst democratically elected government is better than the best military government whatsoever. I grew up under the military regime, under Abacha, under IBB. It wasn't fun. We couldn't even talk in the studio. We couldn't have this discussion then.
That was there.
I mean, you lose your speech first of all. You lose your freedom next. So where are you going to start basing the parameters for development, the parameters for future negotiations? And I think the people deserve to choose who they want to, not the guns. The guns cannot do this. It has been tried and tested. The guns cannot do this. The military are incapable of administrative capacity to run a sane government. The military are not trained to be administrators. They will not be trained now. There is no military college handling administration apart from army and military affairs. They cannot handle the courts. They cannot handle the electoral system. They cannot handle development as per civilian instituted institutions per se. So I think the military is just trying to remove Bazoum for the next person, and when the next person comes, they wish that the person will also do better than Bazoum did.
Anyways, this is for audience. When our guest said the juntas are not as rigid as they think they are, trying to define the meaning of being